Dobrý den, dámy a pánové. Dovolte i mě, abych vás přivítala při zahájení Podzimní plynárenské konference. Já, i když tenhle panel bude v angličtině, tak si dovolím začít v českém jazyce. Omlouvám se tímto našim drahým hostům ze zahraničí. Pár organizačních pokynů. Konferenci jako takovou můžete sledovat na YouTube kanálu Českého plynárenského svazu, a to nejenom dneska, ale i v následujících dnech. To znamená, pokud vám nějaký z bloků vypadne, tak o nic nepřijdete. Následně budou jednotlivé bloky k dispozici opět na YouTube kanálu Českého plynárenského svazu, případně na micrositě Českého plynárenského svazu, který se věnuje Podzimní plynárenské konference ppk.cga.cz. Na slidech najdete i fotky následně z konference a některé zajímavé přednášky, které tady uslyšíte v průběhu těch 2 dní a intenzivních diskuzí. Důležité je, že ta konference je míněna především pro vás a proto je hrozně důležité, abyste se do ní zapojili. Budeme hrozně rádi, pokud budeme moct odpovídat na dotazy, které vás doopravdy zajímají, a proto je důležité, abyste využívali nástroj, který jste už byli zvyklí využívat ze všech našich předcházejících konferencí, a to je Slido. Ten důležitý hashtag je PPK, případně QR kód se zobrazuje i dole. Takže určitě budeme hrozně rádi, pokud se zapojíte do samotné konference jako účastníci prostřednictvím samotných dotazů. And now, if you allow me, I will switch into English and let me welcome our really guests that we are extremely honored that are participating today at our event. We have representatives of the key umbrella energy-related organizations in Brussels that really are extremely busy in these days, not only in shaping the future of the gas in Europe, but also trying to provide safe deliveries of gas for the upcoming 2-3 heating seasons. So as they are extremely busy, I'm so thankful to all of them that they accepted our invitations, and today they will give us their feedback. I think it is to the benefit of all of us that we can discuss with people that are either drafting the legislations or are somehow taking notes and clues how to fine-tune the legislation itself. So let me introduce you all the panelists. I will take it in the alphabetical order. The first of them is Bojana Achowski, who is Secretary General of Gas Infrastructure Europe. Then we have Liam Nolan, who is the president of Marco Gas. Piotr Krush, Director General of ENSO-G. Then we have representatives of European Commission, Katerina Sikov-Magny, who is Director for Green Transformation and Integration of Energy Systems. Welcome, Katerina. And last but not least, we have James Watson, Secretary General of Eurogas. Welcome, all of you. I'm really sorry that you could not be here in Prague with us today. I hope you had a slightly better weather in Brussels than we have here in Prague. But despite the bad weather, we have at least time and opportunity to concentrate on the future of gaseous solutions. At the beginning of the conference, when we prepared the program, we were all hoping to discuss the future, long-term future of gas ahead of us. We were focusing on hydrogen, on biomethane, how to prepare the grids. But I understand that the majority of now is consumed with the current issues, the legislation that's been drafted and adopted in terms, dates that we have never seen before. And I have to congratulate all of you that you are really doing a great job in providing safe gaseous supplies to all of us in the upcoming weeks and months. And I think that is also one of the reasons that the markets are still as functioning as they are, and that we can still we can heat our homes, and hope it's going to stay like that for the end of the season and for the future. So I'm not important. You are the ones that are really important and have great information to all of us. So in order not to waste the time, I would pass the floor already to Bojana Achowski to present the stance of Gas Infrastructure Europe, not only to the issues that we are all discussing from early morning till late night, like saving the gas, probably joint gas purchases, probably price regulations that's ahead of us, but also having or giving us a longer term vision, what comes next. Not only this and upcoming season, but how to prepare for the longer term future of the gaseous solutions, as gas is supposed to stay for us with Europe for several decades. So Bojana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting us today. So the recent events that we are having have led us really to reshuffle the way we manage our business. And this is the way that we have been working on a new time frame that presents how the gas industry will help to overcome the winter that is ahead of us and also the next winters. And when beyond towards the establishment of a climate neutral and of course very much secure economy. I'm representing Gas Infrastructure Europe. We're an association with 70 members, 27 different countries, and we of course represent the pipelines, the underground storages around Europe and also the European LNG terminals. Today we realize, let's say, the security of energy supply is really like oxygen. You don't realize it until you don't need it when it's gone, right? And that's what Europe, its energy diplomacy should be all about, because boosting the European autonomy, it needs to be relied with a mix of local energy production, preferably, but not exclusively renewable, a different variety of sources, high diversity of energy carriers, different origins, of course, different rules, and solid governance for the imports that we are having. Because Europe has very much focused mainly on ruling the internal market, but has mostly abundant international trade. And this is something that needs to be changed. Our gas infrastructure operators have what it takes to support that. Now, looking ahead, indeed, the plan is to decarbonize those parts of the economy, which is very difficult to be electrified. And so the growing demand, let's say, for renewable and low carbon gases means we all need to import, we need to transport, we need to store and export large volumes of gases in a very different variety of different forms. Within and outside Europe, of course, this is what we've seen. And the good news is that we can do that. And the time frame that everybody is talking about now is really the short, the midterm, and the long term. So I will start, of course, with the short term, which means until and after this winter. So overcoming, let's say, the current energy crisis keeps us awake the night. Let's say those are the most important things that all the European citizens would like to find an answer. So for us, the three most important fixes that we need to talk about today on the short perspective is really to start with the fact that we need to have a find a new alternatives for the gas sources. That could be done via imports of LNG from US, from Qatar, or LNG off-takers with extra LNG in their portfolio via pipeline from Azerbaijan, for Algeria, or to increase the domestic production of natural, renewable, and also low-carbon gas. So the LNG terminals that are working with us are already enhancing such kind of options on increasing the import capacity for the coming winter at places, let's say, where it can serve the wider European market. The second thing which is important is that we really need to secure the gas stocks. So last year we have showed really the crucial role of the underground gas storage when we talk about balancing the supply and the demand that we are having in Europe. We need, of course, enough capacity, enough gas in stock ahead of the winter, but also this is something important to secure the routes, to fill them and to use them when it's needed, because we should not forget, of course, that the storage is that provides the half of the European supplies of when we have a cold winter day. And the third important thing, when we talk about the short-term perspective, we know that the European gas mix moves away from Russian gas. And so the infrastructure operators very much needs to change, let's say, the flow patterns from the traditional import and the transport routes. Our good colleagues from ENSOC will bring this data, and the individual TSO will very much adapt the commercial offers and operations to change these flow patterns. And this is really a massive, massive effort, because to peak from tens and tens of gigawatts to be rerouted in a very short time frame it's a very big challenge. It's a challenge which also illustrates the very big and impressive capabilities of gas as an energy carrier. And basically, there's no other carrier that can transport such vast amounts of swiftly from A to B, but then also to Z. When we talk about the medium term should be 23, 25. We need to approve the current situation with the small investments which are needed. And here, the two things we need to understand and to concentrate is that in Europe, we need to benefit from the additional gas. We need to amend the existing and to build additional gas infrastructure that, of course, also should be ready to fulfill the decarbonization fields and also to ensure the well-interconnected and integrated European gas market. We see today that the big problems are between Eastern, Western Europe, and the Digo now towards Southeastern Europe, because the Russian gas flows from east to west, where no region delivers to, and LNG are coming inland. And then in the south, you have North African gas that comes in that it's mainly the LNG terminals are situated there, where you have the Iberian Peninsula. So the missing links, it's in the middle of Europe. That this is where we are going to have a kind of a support, and you have definitely some of the bottlenecks. So in general, basically the landlocked countries don't have the sufficient connections to the LNG ports to replace the pipeline supplies. And this is important to understand for the investments which are needed. The second thing, when we talk about the midterm perspective, is that we need to accelerate the decarbonization with biomethane and hydrogen production indeed. So the massive ramp that we see on biogas means that the substantial investments are also needed. The substantial investments also need a long-term perspective. And this is where, let's say, the policy needs to leave a little bit of a room also in the long term for biomethane, for hence methane infrastructures that we are having. And to help really to speed up the uptake of the hydrogen, the gas infrastructure operators, we really need to adapt the assets that we are having. And this is the European hydrogen backbone where there is coming in. The vision that all these companies are having from 28 countries is to plan to build 28,000 kilometers of hydrogen pipelines by 2030, and then to double it by 2040. But the numbers for hydrogen are also important to take a look, because the future hydrogen infrastructure will be mixed of 60% repurposed of our already existing infrastructure. And then these are the 40% of new hydrogen pipelines. Of course, that will have their costs, is between 80 to 150 billion euros by 2040. And this, of course, have a large reflects the uncertainties of the compensation of the costs. But the repurposing, which is very important here, of the existing gas infrastructure will very much save up to 90% of the costs of building, let's say, a new hydrogen infrastructure. So to put this in a perspective, it's just to give you an example, because a single hydrogen pipeline can transport 10 to 20 times more energy than an electricity cable, based on the same level of investments. Third thing, which is very important, is the long-term perspective that we should have after 2025. And we need to design, let's say, a new gas supply framework for the energy transition. A couple of important things here when we talk about the long-term perspective. For sure, we need to secure a new LNG for Europe, because after 2025, new future-ready LNG terminals are coming online. So additional production is needed, and Europe can only secure that with long-term contracts with key producing countries. And there's no way around that, because the imports for liquid hydrogen for these LNG terminals will be necessary to complement the domestic hydrogen production in a similar way as the natural gas imports we are having today. We can indeed import hydrogen via liquid hydrogen, ammonia, e-methane. And if we really want to recognize which gas, which imports is coming from where and outside Europe, here that we need to emphasize that the international system of guarantees of origin and certificates, which will, let's say, be able to capture the carbon footprint, the different LNG sources, and has to create a market-based solution creation. We also need to foster the renewable outside Europe. As we mentioned, this renewable perspective is very important in long term. So the neighboring countries that we are having, the potential partners around the world, we need to have them on board at early stage when we talk about the uptake of hydrogen. So here we should think about acceleration of the European Mediterranean Energy Cooperation, more concretely with MICREP region. For example, the third important thing in the long-term perspective is that we, as gas infrastructure operators, should continue to complement the European hydrogen backbone and to make room for additional renewable and also for low carbon gases. For that, we'll also need to build, let's say, completely new import routes. So all these European hydrogen backbones that we are having, for example, Spain, for example, France, for example, Germany. And I think these 3 points should be very further developed. So when we're talking about all this perspective, midterm, short-term, long-term, improving the gas market framework in such perspective is really, really important, and it's a top priority. On the same time, talking about security of supply and enhancing the decarbonization. So the development of the hydrogen economy, when we talk about decarbonization, is very important, and it's a key. And our infrastructure indeed will be a backbone of this new ecosystem. So to finalize, what we would like to mention today is to focus on a couple of important points when we talk about the political will, which is very important when we talk about, let's say, boosting all this hydrogen economy, and also the proper regulatory framework that we should keep in mind. So I will start first with the synergies. The synergies has to be exploited. Indeed, the good news is that we, as an existing tool that we are already there for natural gas, can become hydrogen ready. So you need to have a guarantee, a level playing field across the different member states, and then the free vertical unbundling models should be very much extended to hydrogen network operators. So we think in this perspective that legal horizontal unbundling should be removed, and the unbundling of accounts needs to ensure sufficient transparency between the TSOs and also the hydrogen, let's say, operators that we will see in future. The second thing is the value chain approach. The development of the hydrogen economy will bring along, let's say, the whole value chain. And here what we would like to emphasize is that we need to have a very clear establishment of some of the definitions. For example, what is very important for us as an operators is basically that hydrogen storage facility should refer to large facilities. So except facilities receiving only minor amounts of hydrogen blending. The second thing, which is a key, is that the hydrogen terminal should include not only liquefied hydrogen and ammonia, but also should be extended to other hydrogen carriers, such as methanol and the different solutions. The third thing is that investments, of course, financial rules and tariffs designs must be very much looked at. They should provide a possibility and enable investments to guarantee a cost-efficient development of hydrogen infrastructure, because investors seek certainty. This is very important for them, the very proper signals we will give here. And the member states should be also have the option to allow the financial transfers between regulated services within, let's say, this gas and hydrogen. And the last thing I would like to emphasize here on the regulatory perspective that is needed to boost this hydrogen market is the integrated planning. And this is something that has to be enforced, right? Because the sector integration will make it easier for all of us to optimize and to also support, modernize the energy system that we are having now. because we need to have a proper investment in hydrogen that will be made within a long-term perspective in the terms of the future demand, let's say. And all the operators, being storage, LNG, TSOs, should become obligatory participants in this planning process. So these are the concepts that I really wanted to bring forward today. Indeed, in the perspective of security of supply, we are very much focusing on the short term, for example, but the medium, long term, and the very proper political will and regulatory development in these perspectives are important. And at the end of the day, if everything is done right, this energy crisis could be really an accelerator, let's say, for the wind, for the solar electricity, for biomethane, for hydrogen. So in this perspective, this crisis that we're seeing right now could be a catalyst for our continent, let's say, to reach all these long-term climate goals that we are having ahead of that. And I'm quite sure about that. But in the meantime, we, as the infrastructure operators, we are very much happy to support and committed to support Europe with the data that we are having and with all our expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bojana. You just reminded me of one thing. When I entered the gas business, after years with state administration and electricity business, everybody was curious why I'm going to that boring sector. And as you said, all the challenges that are ahead of us, not only short term, but also in the medium term and long term, and how holistic all the challenges are and interlinked. Definitely gas is not a boring business, not at all. I think that we would love to be bored at least for 2 days to somehow overcome the sleeping gap. But never mind. I think it's extremely important, and I have to echo what you said about the challenges that are ahead of us in Central and Eastern Europe, in landlocked countries, where the challenges of substituting Russian gas inflows are extremely challenging, not only in the actual volumes, but especially in really overcoming the infrastructural bottlenecks that are still there in Europe and we did not address in the past because there was a specific mindset. So definitely this is important, but I also would like to echo what you said, that despite we face a really severe security challenge, how to really provide molecules of natural gas to our homes for the upcoming weeks, months, and years, we should not somehow forget about the longer-term vision. And if we want to prepare for a longer-term decarbonization vision for the gaseous solutions in Europe, we have to start now. The time is now, and that's why I'm extremely happy that we have Liam Noah with us, who is representing the most relevant institution, I would say, in Europe that is responsible for the gas codes and standards. And he and his colleagues are going to provide for our safety in the upcoming years. So definitely this is one of the questions I would have for Noah, what to do, how to prepare, and what are the homeworks ahead of all of us to provide for the safe future and longer-term future of gaseous solutions in Europe. The floor is yours. Oh, Liam, sorry. Can you hear us? Sorry.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You have the slides, if I'm correct.
I have. Thank you very much. So I'm going to just share them now.
It works.
So, thank you very much. Okay, it's a great pleasure to be speaking at the conference here today, particularly, in the circumstance when the Czech Republic is holding the presidency of the EU Council at the moment. It's a very welcome to be speaking with you all today. So, as Lanka just said, I'm with Marco Gas, Liam Nolan, President of Marco Gas, and in today's presentation, I'm going to give a summary of just a little bit about Marco Gas itself, talk about Repower EU, the European Commission's plan to deal with the after effects of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and also talk about the decarbonisation, the hydrogen gas package, and also an area then to focus on, which is a particularly important topic for the European gas industry, and that's in relation to methane emission regulations, and then just pull that together in some conclusions. So just a little bit quickly about Marcogas. Marcogas is a technical association of the European gas industry. We have 28 members across 20 different countries, made up of national gas associations and European associations and other organizations that are interested in the natural gas and renewable gas industry. The organization was founded in 1968, so it's even older than I am, and will be celebrating its 55th anniversary next year. We have a number of working groups and standing committees focusing on gas utilization, on gas infrastructure, and an important area of sustainability. We also, in the recent years, have been focusing on what we call new gases, so biomethane, hydrogen, synthetic natural gas. And we've also recently set up a working group in relation to sector integration. So we have, I'll invite you to visit our website, where we have a knowledge hub with a number of technical publications there for people to view. So, and just the slide is just to give some of the organizations that we're working closely with at the moment. And as we said earlier, it is a very busy time for the gas industry, and all these organizations are fully engaged in the future of the gas industry. So just initially, just talk a little bit about Repower EU. So within the plan, there's 35 billion cubic meters of biomethane is projected by 2030. Also plans to much increase the hydrogen output from including 10 billion cubic meters of hydrogen from domestic sources here in Europe, and an additional import of another 10 billion cubic meters. And Marcogas fully supports these measures that the European Commission is taking to reduce our dependency on Russian gas imports. And already these targets, in terms of renewables, increased from 40% renewables in the Fit for 55 package up to a headline figure of 45%. And this situation, even before, was challenging in terms of the targets under Fit for 55, but even more challenging now when you've added the urgency and of the Ukraine situation on top of the urgency of the climate needs of the planet. So speeding up this transition is going to mean stimulating more investment and more activity in our efforts to make sure this transition happens. But it's not going to happen in one winter or not even 2 winters. This is going to take a while to do in terms of the renewable side of things. And the acceleration means that, adaptation of existing networks, there's more work for us to do there, and work that needs to be done quicker as well. In terms of diversification, which is an important part of the plan to reduce the imports from Russia, when we think about the diversification, we shouldn't just think of the different energy sources, but also the diversification of the supply routes and the technologies. In terms of cross-border capacity, we've seen recently the announcement of the opening of the Baltic pipeline, pipeline from Norway via Denmark through the Baltic Sea to Poland. We've also seen an important pipeline linking Poland and Slovakia. So this capacity is building. Also, in terms of diversifying the transport of energy, there's a lot of focus on LNG, and we see in the Netherlands recently the Eemshaven terminal taking its first delivery of LNG in September. And we also see FSRUs be popping up around Europe as well, particularly lots of plans in Germany, where 5 are planned in the near future. So a lot of activity in that area. There's also opportunities in terms of taking advantage of sector coupling operations as part of the plan as well. And just to highlight the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is I suppose, a plan and a facility that was there after we came out of COVID, and we thought that the worst was over at that time when we came out of COVID, but we didn't know what was ahead of us at that time. But that facility is still at the heart of delivering Repower EU, and really is an approach for coordination and planning of finance and efforts at a national and European level in terms of the various national and infrastructure projects that are needed. So just in terms of energy saving, obviously saving energy is a first port of call. If we can save energy, that's the right way to approach things, and it's critical in terms of critical demands from various member states and how we define them. The balance between critical and non-critical demand in various countries are different, and it's important that Europe maintains its solidarity between the energy systems and between the countries as part of this plan. And users at domestic level and industrial level will need more information in terms of energy saving. That's happening, but then also in terms of how they will, if there is curtailment in the future in an emergency situation, how do they stand and what's the scenario that they can face to know that ahead of time. So just to talk about the hydrogen markets and the decarbonisation gas markets, a little bit on that. The deployment of low carbon fuels is likely to emerge in parallel throughout Europe. So we're likely to see various renewable gases being developed along the same time, and then also in different parts of Europe as well, different paces of development as well. But what I think is critical is that the industry is stepping up to these technical challenges and is and the existing infrastructure will have an important part to play in the transition period. Progressively, natural gas infrastructure will be complementary to that transition, and we'll see slowly natural gas and fossil gas being replaced by biomethane and other low carbon gases. In market gas, we've contributed to this analysis in terms of our studies, in terms of technical assessments, in terms of both the infrastructure and the safety area. People will be aware that a lot of the skills within the gas industry today, they focus on safety and the safety culture, how we design, build, maintain, and ultimately decommission infrastructure has a lot of parallels and similarities with the future renewable gas industry as well. And so these skills will be brought to bear in the future as well and can be leveraged. And I think it's important to understand as Europeans that we have a huge asset in terms of, and valuable asset in terms of the existing gas infrastructure, and are in a unique position to leverage that for the future and for the transition to renewable gas networks, including hydrogen for the future. So just methane emissions, just a little bit on the background of methane emissions. This is a very important topic for the European gas industry. At the moment, about 0.6% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in Europe come from the gas industry. That's about 4% of methane emissions, but although those figures might sound small, it's still a lot of gas, and it's still a priority for the industry to make sure that can be minimized. And a lot of progress has been made in recent years in terms of minimizing the gas emissions. But it's a complex area in terms of the measurement, the calculation, the modeling, and the quantification of the gas. And indeed, there's a new standard which has been developed now by SEN, which is based on a Marco gas technical document from some years ago. So the industry has been working in this area for a number of years, and validation and verification of methane emissions is an important part to ensure that there's transparency and the data in terms of the uncertainty is reduced. Reporting is another important area, and it increases transparency, but it's important in terms of the regulations that there isn't duplication of reporting or duplication of verification, and that there is commonality in terms of the reporting, and that it's understood in terms of the national authorities, national competent authorities, and at the European level and at the international level, that there's a consistency in reporting to allow the industry to deliver this process in the most efficient way. Leak detection and repair is, again, another area that could be developed further in terms of possibility for maybe the European Commission to give a mandate to SEN to develop a standard in this area, looking at the different methodologies for leak detection and repair. The industry is also making great progress in terms of reducing venting and flaring. But again, it's important that when we look at these type of issues and approaches, that we focus on the areas and put our resources into the areas that really make a difference to the methane emissions, and that we're not spending huge effort that's disproportionate in terms of the materiality of the methane emissions. So we get the best leverage that we can in terms of the resources we have to reduce methane emissions. The industry is also, looking at innovative technologies and methodologies. Market gas is helping the industry disseminate information on best practice, looking to help European policymakers understand how the industry today operates and how best to improve the regulations, and providing insights to the standardization bodies like SEN, and exchanging information with international organizations as well. So there are costs, and it's important that as I said, that we these costs are recognized by the regulators and the authorities, that the regulators support the industry in its efforts in this area, and in terms of frequency of reporting and verification, that these methodologies are not disproportionate, and that the focus is on maximizing the reduction of the methane emissions. So there's some of the benefits are listed here, in the interest of time, I won't go through them, but just to say that market gas and the other industries associations like NSOG, GIE, GERG and others, and Eurogas are all working together in terms of methane emissions and putting the industry views forward in terms of methane reductions in the energy sector and those regulations. And certainly it's very important for the industry's voice to be heard at this stage, so that the best regulations can be brought forward. So in conclusion, just to say that Repower EU is the right approach for the current situation in terms of dealing with the situation that we find ourselves in, and it requires continued solidarity among the member states and the industry players. There's many technical challenges, particularly due to the urgency of the diversification of the energy sources in the short term. Hydrogen and the reduction of methane emissions will be essential part of the energy policy and the delivery of the decarbonisation package. The industry, as I said, has long-standing experience in terms of reducing emissions. Even before climate change, safety in terms of reducing emissions was a very important driver in terms of the industry. So the industry bodies have a crucial part to play in terms of shaping those regulations and advising. And hydrogen, biomethane, and other low carbon gases, which are relatively new but increasing, will mean that the greater efforts are needed by the industry to transition towards the decarbonisation grid. And the existing gas grid has a very key and important part to play in that future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Liam, really a lot for your presentation. I think that the work you are doing on information gathering, further elaboration, standardization setting for the preparation to new gaseous solutions, especially for hydrogen, is extremely important, and we all value it, even here in the Czech Republic, extremely strongly. I'm really happy that you highlighted another topic, that is not echoed that much in the media, as everybody is pre-consumed with the current situation. Nevertheless, it still has a relatively fast-track adaptation process within the European legislation, and that is our commitment to reduce methane emissions till 2030. The legislation was, I would say, quite dramatically moved forward by the French presidency, and I think we can expect trialogues already happening during the Czech presidency of the European Union. And the methane emissions regulation definitely have a huge impact, or will have a huge impact on how we operate the grids, but also other parts of the infrastructure, and it has to be addressed thoroughly. And I think it's extremely important that you have the opportunity to exchange the best practice and the real evidence from the field with the representatives drafting the legislation itself. So thank you very much for this. Now I would pass the floor to the gentleman whose organization is extremely busy with doing all the data analysis, simulations, and consulting European Commission day and night, and gas coordination group, focusing on reshifting the gas flows, calculating solidarity, crossing fingers for all of your calculations that you are not making mistakes, and also on the same time providing us for the safe future for alternative models. So Piotr, it's up to you and the organization you represent, NSOG. So thank you in advance and looking forward to your contribution.
Good morning, Lenka. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank for this kind invitation to this very timely event, and congratulate you the discussions we have today. I hope that my presentation is visible to all of you, and I can start my intervention. Yeah, first of all, the first phrase I think is very relevant to all of us in the panel, that we are extremely busy. And to set the scene a bit, of course, when we were planning this 22nd year, we were thinking about strongly about the package, about the future, but nevertheless, the present is now. And indeed, there are many things happening that are surely interacting the trajectory and the goals that we have put forward as the industry. On NSOG, I will say just a few words. As an organization strongly embedded into the European legislative framework, we are of course responsible for providing network codes, transparency tools. We developed each 2 years a very important piece of work, which is called 10-year network development plan, that is serving then many European processes. On the top also, we provide the outlooks, winter and summer outlooks. So for years, the most, and you use this word, boring pieces of our work never read by the market. Suddenly, since last year, they are very, very much consulted by everyone. I would say it's a bittersweet satisfaction because they are only read when we miss this air that Bojana said, so we cannot breathe anymore, and then we look for any solution at hand. On the top of that, I think that since already sometimes we have embraced the vision and the need also for infrastructure to transition in a pace that will support our future goals in Europe. As we are fully aware, we are all heading to zero carbon economy in 2050. And also the networks have to go that way in order to underpin the development of the future zero carbon economy in Europe, which we as now will be strongly based on energy system integration. And we are also quite sure that there will be still place for molecules and electrons in this future. That's why in the course of years, we have proposed a setup of the activities that look at the future of gas grids, so how to decarbonize them, how to discuss it, and how to discuss optimal conditions for such developments of the networks for them to underpin the future development of hydrogen, biogas, and low carbon gases. Discussing openly with all the stakeholders on board, be them from investors, regulatory side, along the value chain. What is also mentioned here, I think it was also echoed in Liam's presentations, that no big strategy will go with success without proper discussion about technical issues. That's why we have to discuss also gas quality issues for hydrogen, guarantees of origin, all the aspects that will then rule the management of the networks. What we also want to provide for the market is also to supplement the European processes of development of different hydrogen projects via visualization platform. And then to put also support to many of the alliances that are being set up. And on the top of that, discussing our tasks, it's worth mentioning that already this year TYNDP edition will already include an important number, over 100 hydrogen projects that were put forward by the project promoters. Nevertheless, I think that as we sit here and as the winter is approaching, we really cannot seriously talk about our long-term perspective without really looking at the short-term security of supply. And I think it was also echoed in your introductory remarks and by the colleagues that if we are not properly managing this winter, the next one, and maybe even the further one, we are really in difficulty to provide for the transition of our networks and our assets. Because we know that if there is no security of supply, then our industries, our citizens, our economies are under huge pressure, and there will be no space about planning the long-term goals. That's why, as it was said, already since the last autumn season, NSOC has embarked on a very intensive work with policymakers, stakeholders on a different forums. As you mentioned, gas coordination group, various analyses, preparing assessing our preparedness for the last winter, and then going also through the summer season, how to provide for filling up the storage for the coming winter, knowing that our supplies are at danger. What I can also inform you is that we are today on the third day of gas year, and from our data, which we also work together with GIA, we know that our storages in Europe are filled about 90%. So I think it's also very good news, minding that in the regulation, this fast track regulation that was proposed by the Commission, we were aiming at 80%. So it gives a bit of positive message when we are entering the winter season. Nevertheless, it's also worth mentioning, and I want to put also this occasion to give a big credits to NSOC team and also to all the TSOs that gathered during since the start of war, during the meetings that were held each day, during which they exchanged the current situation with the gas flows. The mechanism, which is called regional coordination, has worked perfectly. So indeed, we have this 24/7 communication that we exchange information. We also plan how to deal with certain or sudden activities and try to do all the tabletop exercises that already can handle some of the difficult situation in a real time. So we also develop the tools, and the tools that are used. Of course, you all used one transparency platform. We also provided some visualization charts to see what are the current flows, and on the top of that, a number of outlooks that were also quite heavily consulted and used by our policymakers were issued, like an yearly outlook, which was also a part of the discussion on the regulations, how to decrease the demand during the winter, which we are basically facing. Nevertheless, looking at the longer perspective, and here I think that it's also very important to discuss the discussion about new gases, about hydrogen, in a framework of current situation. Since some time, we acted in the framework created by European Hydrogen Strategy, by various national hydrogen strategies that were presented by the member states, that were building blocks for planning the future for this new vector of energy, this new gas. We see that with the new goals and the goals that are also related to the crisis situation with Repower Europe, and here it's very important to mention that not only short-term security of supply, but also our transformation towards new gases will be used as a tool to decrease our dependence on Russian gas supplies. And with new goals, we also have to work now together to provide for a really sound basis for infrastructure to be able to really deliver these goals. And as it was also mentioned, it's very important to say that gas assets are already there. They can be used. They can that can provide for many synergies to speed up the processes to ramp up the hydrogen economy. We see that already with the repower goals. We see that also with the corridor projects that can also include vast areas of existing gas assets that can be repurposed at a fraction of new investments and be used in a long term to underpin for new economy. New economy and new energy system, it's very important to say it's not only infrastructure, but to be successful, we have to decide all along the value chain, vertically and also horizontally, because we have to know what is the geography of the new production, where will be the imports, and where will be also the downstream for new energy. And of course, the interlinkages between molecules and electrons will be crucial in order to plan well the ramp up of green hydrogen. And as I mentioned before, we have to be aware of all the technical standards that are in place to provide safety and stability of the operation, not mentioning the securities of supply all along the process. To be more illustrative, as you can see, we now have these tasks ahead of us. And I think that sometimes pictures say more than 1,000 words. So you see what is at stake now, apart from delivering short-term addressing short-term inefficiencies in flows and developing the project that will serve security of supply in short and medium term to bring additional volumes of gas for us to cope with a difficult situation. We already have to look how to put together this bottom-up approach with the infrastructure we are planning, with the high-level objectives of the corridors and supply corridors to Europe of new gases like hydrogen. And this is where we see our role to step in and to work together to map the needed infrastructure and the map processes to be more efficient and to meet the targets. Moreover, we will meet the targets also being supported by new regulation. And as you know, we are now seeing the development of new regulatory proposals that were put forward under hydrogen and decarbonized gas package that will then set the scene for the new market. And we at Sensok, we really welcome the package that includes already renewable and low carbon gases, that focuses also on security of supply issues, and gives a robust framework for the methane emissions. And here I can only confirm that all the associations and all the members and all the representatives of the industry are working together to make this story a success story, to really show that Europe can deliver on the targets in time and give also the signal to the rest of the world in handling methane emissions. I would say for the package that of course we see it as a step towards establishing new market, but what we would say in general that we would like to see the package also enabling to deliver synergies, meaning that we should do our utmost to use the existing assets, the existing solutions as a cornerstone of the new infrastructure setup for hydrogen. Why? Because it will be much way cheaper to repurpose the existing assets. It will be also very easy for the companies that are already handling a lot of pipeline transformation. And what we are facing now is need for speed and providing for this also, I would say, infrastructure leverage for developing the hydrogen economy. We know from the past that once the infrastructure is there, it's working and it's set to stay for a long time. It also gives a lot of security and clarity for the investors that are now embarking for the new mediums for the businesses, for the industry, and for the end users. To shortly sum up, what factors of success we see for the energy transition with the particular respect for the infrastructure. As I said before, we have to engage all together all along the value chain. I think this is very proper even if we discuss now security of supply, we have to cooperate closely all along from upstream to downstream, discussing with producer, discussing with importers, but also discussing with the ones who will use the new commodities in order to set up the optimal framework. The framework also relates to the regulatory area, and here, as I said, what we would like to see is that long-term clarity that will govern the future setup of the hydrogen economy. And here I can say that we welcome the third package approach that is also giving the principles that were successful for developing the gas market so far. Synergies are there. We already work with different actors. We look closely at the energy system integration, how to put in place necessary investments locally, but also in a backbone. And to finish with what we started, security of supply is a key throughout the process. We cannot forget, and we cannot find ourselves in a situation that we are facing now, also designing new markets. So we have to be aware that security of supply and the aspects of maintaining sustainability and stability of our network will be of crucial importance for our economy all along the transition way. And here I would like to start my short introduction. And thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Piotr, once again for all the work you are doing as NSOG for all of us, and also for your presentation. I think that you really correctly highlighted that we are all facing an existential threat that is a result of the decision taken outside of the European Union. We have to cope with it. And it's extremely important that we show determination, we prove solidarity, otherwise we will lose the credibility as the sector of the consumers in the market, and that's extremely important, not to endanger the whole European system, the solidarity and the credibility of the pan-European market. So it's extremely challenging, and so far what we could observe is that we are working jointly to provide for the resilience of the system as such. What I heard, and you echoed basically also the contributions of Liam and of Bojana, is that once we prepare for the decarbonizing future, for admitting new gaseous carriers into our pipelines, into our infrastructure, be it biomethane and especially hydrogen, we should do it wisely. We cannot allow for excessive costs. Otherwise, this would be extremely challenging. We have to do it wisely. We have to have a robust and stable regulatory framework. And what the last weeks and months has shown us is that the gas market, European gas market, cannot live on its own, and it has tremendous impacts into all the spheres of the economy, and especially there is a strong correlation between electricity markets and gas markets. So these are extreme challenges to every single one of us, but I think that the biggest headaches have people in European Commission. So that's why I'm extremely happy that Katrina was so eager to participate at our today conference. I saw that you were really listening patiently to everything what has been said so far, and I'm definitely sure that there is going to be a discussion after the end of your presentations, including after James. So Katrina, could you tell us what are the ideas within the European Commission? What is ahead of all of us? So what can we expect in the upcoming weeks or even upcoming hours, as everything is extremely speedy these days. So to focus on 2 or 3 weeks in advance makes absolutely no sense, I would say. So Katrina, thank you once again that you are here with us today. We really value it a lot. And could you tell us what's in the heads of the European Commission and what you have prepared for all of us for the upcoming weeks? Thank you.
Many thanks, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Very pleased to be here today to discuss a very topical issue, and also thanking already my co-panelists for many good and interesting points. Of course, too bad that we cannot be in Czechia, but we have to be connecting remotely, but in these busy times, that's actually quite an advantage. So But let's first, before looking into the future, let's look a little bit into the past. And as my co-panelists and have already said, the current energy crisis, the Putin's war in Ukraine, putting big pressure on all consumers in Europe, on citizens and companies, which many of them cannot afford the increase overall in the energy bills. As the winter approaches, there is a risk that the situation gets worse with a further tightness in the market and the possibility that Russia will further extend the disruptions that are already affecting 13 or 14 member states. This is why we as the EU need to strengthen our preparation for the coming winter, and we have been working all together very hard to achieve this. So first of all, the preparation for the winter is based on the various tools that you know very well, and many of them have already been mentioned, including the Repower EU plan, the storage regulation, and the demand reduction regulation as the most recent ones. Firstly, the Repower EU has set the objective of becoming totally independent of Russian fossil fuels by 2027 through diversification of supply, development of renewables, and energy efficiency. This will certainly not be easy, considering the depth of the dependence created over the years and the impact on the EU economy. This will require significant efforts, concrete action, coordination, and above all, solidarity among EU member states and its near partners. It's only by working together, and now with all governments, industries, utilities, and our international partners, that we can succeed in this endeavor. Together with the member states, we have set up the EU energy platform as the cornerstone of our strategy to diversify away from Russian fossil fuels and to improve security of supply ahead of next winter, but also beyond. It is our strong belief that establishing long-term cooperation and partnerships with our trade partners is essential to support the delivery of gas and later hydrogen to the EU. It is important to remember here also that we do need infrastructure, but we do need it very fast when it comes to gas. I would like to underline here that if we are successfully phasing out Russian fossil fuels by 2027, we need to act today and not in 2028 or 2029. And in parallel, we of course need to invest in renewables and energy efficiency more than ever. But then looking at the second piece in this puzzle, the gas storage regulation that set a target of at least 80% of gas filling in storage by November 2022. The implementation of this regulation is already showing its success, as we have already more than 85% of gas in storage at EU level, with 12 member states exceeding 80%. We are working very closely with the remaining ones who have not yet reached the target in order for them to be in the comfortable position then by November, 1st of November. Thanks to these measures, the European energy system has been resilient and has been able to replace Russian gas already to a large extent by continuing to supply member states. Of course, these measures are not enough. As the heating season is approaching, they will need to be complemented by measures on the demand side. For this reason, the Commission adopted in July the Save Gas for Safe Winter communication, which is accompanied by a demand reduction plan and regulation. Two major tools that considerably strengthen our preparation for the winter. The regulation sets a target of reducing gas demand by at least 15% at the moment on a voluntary basis, but if an EU emergency or alert is being declared, this measure would become binding. What I would want to say here is that, of course, as much as each of us can save in gas consumption already today, whether the regulation is binding or not, the better it will be, because that gas can then be used in the wintertime when it gets colder than today. This, of course, does not mean that the winter after this one will be safe, so we need to continue on these measures also for the years to come. If we then look at electricity for a short while, because the price of gas is, of course, affecting prices in electricity, because we still use a lot of gas to produce electricity, and of course need to also phase that out in due course. We have seen electricity prices at record levels, in some cases tenfold from what is the usual level, and this is becoming unsustainable both for people and industry to sustain, and therefore also for our economy. A rapid and coordinated EU response has thus therefore been required to preserve the macroeconomic stability of the EU. And this is why on the 14th of September, the Commission adopted a proposal for an emergency regulation to address these high electricity prices. And last Friday, the Energy Council adopted it so that it can then be implemented. This regulation introduces common measures to reduce electricity demand and to collect and distribute the energy sector surplus revenues to final consumers. So in a way, it decouples the high gas price from electricity price by setting a revenue cap on inframarginal electricity production, and which is then to be channeled back to consumers through lower tariffs. But we need to continue the work, and I'm sure you have all read also the conclusions of the Energy Council, which also discussed the need of a cap on the gas sector. What form of this cap, price cap, or could take is still under reflection. There were many views expressed by the ministers in that meeting, and we are currently working with all member states to come up with a plan in the next weeks to come. I have to disappoint you in the sense that I will not be able to tell you today what will go into that plan, because we are currently working on it. But before closing, then a couple of words on decarbonization of gas. So I want to recall that the Repower EU envisages, as colleagues have already mentioned, additional 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen produced domestically in the EU, complemented by 10 million tons of imported renewable hydrogen from outside the EU. Here, the important point is therefore to put in place these additional renewables so as to be able to produce these additional tons of hydrogen. And that is quite a challenge, and I'm sure we will all work together to make that happen. The biomethane target was also mentioned, so 35 billion cubic meters by 2030, which can directly replace Russian gas, and which is also available across the EU through waste or agricultural manure and similar. But putting in place these ambitious objectives requires action at least at 3 levels. First, investments. And here our hydrogen strategy is an investment agenda. At EU level, we are expecting investments in the range of 350–500 billion euros for the production, transport, storage, and dispatch of hydrogen to the different end-use sectors. So quite an investment challenge, which we all need to work hard to make it happen. When it comes to the legal framework, secondly, we are on track with the hydrogen and gases decarbonization package, which was presented December, almost a year ago, and which proposes new rules to implement and to promote and to incentivize the use of renewable and low carbon gases, make their penetration into the sector faster than it would be the case otherwise. This proposal is now being discussed by the co-legislators, and we expect to enter into the trialogues quite soon. Thirdly, the Commission also published, as was mentioned last December, the first ever legislative proposal on methane emissions reduction in the energy sector. Methane, as we all know, is a far more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, so it requires urgent action. And we are working also in the context of our international partners. We are in the EU with this piece of legislation also leading the international action to tackle emissions. At the COP26 UN climate conference, we launched the Global Methane Pledge in partnership with the United States, whereby over 100 countries committed to reduce their methane emissions of 30% by 2030 compared to 2020. So we do expect now to work very fast on the interinstitutional negotiations on the methane regulation together with the Council and the European Parliament, so as to get the agreement and get the measures to be implemented, the sooner the better. So we do count on the support from all stakeholders, be they from the gas sector, be they from the electricity sector, be they from the political sectors, to work together in order to deliver fast on these important objectives. The role of the industry will be key to ensure the decarbonization of the gases sector, and I rely on the cooperation of all of you to make this happen. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Katrina, once again very much. I saw a slight disappointment at James' face, not knowing what's going to come with the price regulation. I think we are all curious. But before I give floor to James, I would like to make a small commercial for all those that are listening to us. Do use Slido if you have any questions with hashtag PPK, so that we can, once we finish the introductory remarks, we can go and answer the questions you are really interested in. James, you are in a specific position because your members are also suppliers, retailers, and I think that besides all the other issues that have been currently discussed, there is quite a substantial potential change in the ways we trade gas or we price gas ahead of us. And it's not easy. Katrina correctly mentioned EU platform for potential joint gas purchases and many other new things that are emerging in the market. So besides all that has been addressed, it would be probably really good if we could hear your opinions, or not only James's opinions, but also Eurogas, but you can really use yours presentations on what do you think on it. The floor is yours, James.
No, thanks very much, Lenka, and it's great to be back at the Czech Gas annual conference. I wish you were also in person. And yes, thanks very much for the invitation. I've listened with great interest to the presentations we've had so far. And I would just like to sort of tell a story, if you will, about the situation that we were in. I would go back a few years and start with the point that ACER made, the regulators of Europe, to say that the gas markets in Europe are one of the best functioning energy markets in the world at that time. And I think this is probably a very fair comment. The gas markets that the European Commission created were working very well. Unfortunately, Russia decided to invade Ukraine, and in the process of this, weaponized gas. And as such, I think we've seen unprecedented turmoil in our markets. The war has led to prices that we couldn't possibly have imagined within the market. We have seen destruction of pipelines, possibly up to sabotage. This is absolutely unimaginable even a year ago, were I to sit there with you all. And so this has thrust the security of supply of gas really into the spotlight. This is the reality that we are now facing. Europe is at war. We may not recognize it because there may not be bombs falling us here in Brussels, but there are not that far away in Ukraine. And our solidarity and support and sympathy for the Ukrainian people has led to certain political decisions in Russia to, if you will, try to make our lives as uncomfortable as possible. In Eurogas, we remain fully supportive of the Ukrainians. We support our member Naftogaz of Ukraine, and we respond very much to their requests for support to keep their system running as much as is possible in the face of great difficulty with an enemy in their land. Nevertheless, I will say this, whilst our market has, of course, been plunged into turmoil, the European Commission have not, and have risen up to the challenge. Katerina, I think I've never known so much legislative and non-legislative activity in a year. My hair is usually relatively dark, as you can see, but if you get close now, you can start to see the grey hairs appearing, because I don't think I've ever had to face such a legislative onslaught. But it's for a good reason, and we can't really argue with it. In Eurogas, we support the Repower EU initiatives, particularly strongly on the biomethane initiative to get to 35 billion cubic meters, which you've mentioned, Katerina. We hope, and like I say, we have to say hope, we hope the European Parliament and the Council will get behind it. That is a lot of hope. We fully support the idea of hydrogen, though you are going to have to let me question you a little bit, because we can see the domestic production, 10 million tonnes, 2030, this makes sense. The 10 million tonnes of imports, however, leaves a lot of details to our imagination. Is it envisaged that these will be imported by pipeline from North Africa, Algeria, Morocco, or from Azerbaijan? Or are they to be brought by liquid carriers or different carriers, some sort of methanol or ammonia? Because you will know very well there's only one ship in the world today that carries liquid hydrogen, and that goes from Australia to Japan. We only have 7 years to 2030, really, 7.5. We might be generous to ourselves. So in Eurogas, we have to ask the question about the 10 million imported because it's not clear to us what the plan is here. And I'm sorry if it's been made available to others, but we don't know it. And we would be very keen to understand how this infrastructure is going to be used and how it's going to be built and delivered. Domestically, we're pretty sure we can do it. We don't know how the 10 million tonnes of imports will be achieved. And we also supported the LNG swing, definitely quickly reduce Russian gas. Let's go for LNG. That will also require us to build infrastructure. Boyana, Piotr have mentioned that they know full well that we will need to have LNG terminals and increased pipes. The big discussion today about MidCat. These are the things that we have to reorganise. Indeed, Boyana mentioned this new west to east view. There's no doubt about that. The EU-US task force at the end of March, which also came from Repower EU, where Ursula von der Leyen and indeed President Biden came together and agreed that there should be 50 billion cubic meters of US LNG every year coming from the US, we also fully support. However, we also think that there needs to be a bit more clarity on what the long-term future of natural gas is in the European Union, because in the staff working document that came with Repower EU, there is a forecast of about 120 billion cubic meters of natural gas by 2030. That is today essentially what we get from Norway, Algeria, Azerbaijan, and LNG in any case. And then there's a question of whether you need the extra 50 BCM on top. And I mention that because it is difficult for my members who are essentially buyers, they are the buyers of natural gas, to sign the long-term contracts we need with the US to meet those 50 billion cubic meters targets. And also that will help us control prices. And that is one of the things where we think we need a bit more clarification. Is it truly the intention to reduce gas from around 380 billion cubic meters today to 120 within 7.5 years? This seems massively ambitious, but also probably unrealistic. But this also then spreads contagion in the markets because we're not sure how long can we sign long-term contracts for. Is it for 7 years? We won't get much from the US on that. They're commercially minded. We need 15, 20-year certainty, which means we need a re-evaluation of the staff working document that was produced with Repower EU and those forecasts for natural gas. Otherwise, we can say we're very, very supportive of the Repower EU initiative. As I mentioned, we think this is a good direction. After that, we've seen some really strong and fast moves from the European Commission, which we were able to support. I think that we are very much moving forward in Eurogas on joint procurement. It's a touchy issue. I mean, it wasn't something we've always supported in the past. However, this is an emergency situation. And we recognize the needs, especially of countries like the Czech Republic, Slovakia, not having borders with the sea, so difficult to get LNG. So we fully see that. We see our members from these regions also asking for more action on joint procurement. And so we've set up a round table in Eurogas where we meet with the American suppliers regularly and we talk to them about what can be done. And the upshot is that we generally can support in these emergency situations joint procurement. We look to the European Commission to move forward on that. And not all players are going to be involved, and that's why I think it was necessary that it's voluntary. But there are specific areas, Southeastern Europe, Central Europe, where this will make a lot of sense. And some of the bigger players will be willing to get involved. And so I do think that there is an increasing urgency to move forward with the joint procurement for those countries that need it. I also think on storage, really, chapeau, one of the fastest pieces of legislative work that we've seen. We're already getting to 90% levels, around about 90% levels as an average in Europe already. That's pretty good. I know it's not shared equally across Europe, but in fact, the very fact that we're there comes down to the requirements of the European Commission. And so, really, again, good activities. Storage is one of the best ways we have of reducing the influence of Russia upon what we do. So storing the gas has been a very, very good mechanism, and certainly one that was available to the European Commission that they did. Of course, all countries don't have the same storage capabilities, just like they don't have the same access to LNG. And that's why I would come back again to say that this is where we have to look at things like joint procurement in these emergency situations. The next chapeau is, of course, for the Save Energy for a Safe Winter. Katrina's mentioned it. 15% gas reduction, fuel switching. Who could imagine that Eurogas would be saying that we could support such things? But in an emergency, we see no choice. This is exactly what we need to do. We need to reduce the amount of gas that is being consumed. And these things have been done in record time. They are being done in record time to help us, help consumers as well, help industry in Europe. And we have to think in those terms. Industry has made a lot of effort to reduce its demand, but it's always not clear how much more they can actually do. So again, we say, these are the targets we support. We have to look how each industry can deal with this. And indeed, I think the European Commission has done a good job at trying to identify priority sectors that will need gas and which ones were less priority. Obviously, can't keep everybody happy, and we are coming out of COVID. But nevertheless, these are the directions that we have to go. The council regulation you've also mentioned, so I won't touch on it too much, but fully support the 10% and 5% targets on electricity generation reduction, in particular the peak period, because our members tell me that if you reduce a kilowatt hour of electricity in this period, you can probably save 2 kilowatts of gas. So in essence, the saving electricity is saving gas. I know the electricity sector don't like to talk about it that much, but gas is still powering the electricity sector quite majorly. And so when you are saving in peak hours, it's peak hours where gas is really there, and that's where we need to save. So again, quite correct in the focus that there has been. On the financial side, Eurogas has been open to the inframarginal caps. We see the necessity of that in a way to pay for the measures that have to be paid to help consumers and industry. Also, the solidarity contribution from the fossil fuel sector, we are open to that. Maybe some members have raised the question whether it should be 20% or more, but in essence, the direction is understood because of these, again, emergency situations. And I think that is where we would say that from an emergency situation, all of these activities make sense. In the background, we have the revision of the gas directive and gas regulation, which set the market up over time. We are supportive of those, and I think of the way that things are progressing, we also understand that therefore there will be a long-term market beyond the emergency measures. We would say the same for the electricity market. We are sympathetic to the ideas of reform of the electricity market in Eurogas. It's a broad position. But we do think that, again, there are things that we have to do immediately for emergencies, but we must also take a careful view of what the long-term interference in markets should be. Because as I said, outside of war, the markets have functioned. When war is upon us, it's very difficult to see how we can manage to keep the markets functioning because we're not in a normal situation. I would like to know more about price caps, Katrina, but it's okay. I understand you can't tell us. It's an incredibly divisive issue. We have many polarized views within Eurogas, and we have no position on it yet. We are working on it. So you have my sympathy at least, because I know how difficult it is to try and begin negotiations between 27 different countries and even beyond. So yes, we do see the difficulties in that, but nevertheless the importance of it. And of course the liquidity support, it's the sleeping, shall we say, the sleeping ogre. If we don't get this right, then we can have a serious financial contagion and the inability of my members to actually buy gas because getting collateral is extremely difficult. As prices have increased, many companies simply can't afford it. And you are seeing many companies have been nationalized in the last few months. And I'm not just talking about one or two. There are many companies that you perhaps don't see that all need the support of governments that didn't need the support a year ago. These are all casualties of war, if you will, but that is because of what has been waged against us. And the weaponization of gas from Russia has had these unforeseen consequences. And therefore, we need those kind of actions, and we need that liquidity support. And we strongly, strongly urge the European Commission to move forward in that. I know you are. I know you've worked with ESMA, but we would need to see something relatively quickly to avoid which could be an avoidable shortage. And I think that's also the uncertainty that leads to contagion. I think I will stop there because I've probably covered quite a lot of issues. But in principle, I think that we have to say one thing that we do believe very strongly. We are in an emergency, but we must not lose sight of the midterm objectives. We must continue to renewablize and decarbonize the gas sector. REPowerEU has done a very good job of taking up the idea of targets that Eurogas and GIE, you can say that very clearly because we are together in this, believe very strongly that we need to set those targets, and we welcome that. These are the type of directions that we need to avoid uncertainty about what the future of gas is. The sooner that we can build renewable and low carbon gas infrastructure and develop that, the sooner we can achieve the objectives of REPowerEU, which also involve reducing dependency on Russian gas as quickly as possible. Lenka, I'll stop there. Probably overran a little bit, but hopefully it's got 15 minutes for a bit of Q&A. Anyway, thanks again for the invitation. I hope you found that useful.
Definitely, and don't worry, we all get our gray hair, but at least we can cover it. But for many, it's sexy to have it. You mentioned several issues that are extremely important, and because I already look at the tablet, I'm paying attention to you, but I was looking at the questions that we are receiving, and quite a few people are interested about the EU purchasing platform and its stake. You mentioned it that the times has changed. I remember discussions a year ago when for the first time the European Commission presented something like potential for joint gas purchases, and everybody was really quite skeptical, to say at least, about the institute, about the times are changing and we are really facing unprecedented situation. I was present at one of the discussions focusing on the future of potential joint gas purchases as a voluntary tool that you correctly mentioned, and there were two contradictory opinions, both supportive of the platform. The one was focusing on really short-term imminent action taken for eliminating the pressure on the markets for the upcoming heating seasons for the obligatory gas storages. So we should think short-term and act extremely fast. The other vision was more echoing your worries that you actually pronounce, and that is there is a huge unclarity how much gas we will need in the future, and it's that therefore it's extremely challenging, especially for smaller players, to commit for, let's say, 15 years contracts for the new gas purchases. So that's why a joint action, coordinated whatever by the European Commission, even maybe linked with a liquidity assistance, that would be vital, could be a preferred option by the second group of the potential supporters of the event. So my question is both to Katrina, if there are already any visions of when and how the joint purchasing platform could start working, and maybe a question for Piotr. In your works as NSOG, you definitely have to cope with the gas flows, not only on a really short-term basis, but also for a longer-term basis. And how do you see or calculate the gas rationing within different parts of Europe? Here, talking on behalf of the Czech Republic, once the situation is overcome, we still see a potential for increases of gas consumption because of coal to gas switch for district heating. I understand that in many other regions of Europe, this definitely will not be the case because you have solved the problems. So the two questions, both for Katrina, for Piotr, and maybe Bojana, if Gas Infrastructure Europe has an opinion on the joint gas purchases, it would be also welcomed.
Thank you, Lenka. The platform has already started working. So I think that is the first point I wanted to underline, and has met with all the players in different parts of Europe, has established 5 regional groups that have looked at what is the situation, what gas is there, what are the short-term infrastructure bottlenecks, and also then how to address these and how to allocate the gas that is then coming from very different directions than it used to come in the past. So the platform has been very active on this side already. And then when it comes to the joint purchasing, that is has been mentioned by many and has been endorsed by the large majority of the ministers, for instance, in the Energy Council meeting on Friday, is something that colleagues have also been working on. It requires certain legal provisions to be put in place. But here, what I would want to underline is that first we need a European approach whereby different member states, or more particularly the different companies, are not competing for the same gas and then increasing the price because of these competing bids, if you wish. So that's why it is of utmost importance to get our acts together and work together also in terms of, I mean, it doesn't need to be everybody purchasing together, but at least having a joint approach on how to go about to the global market in getting the gas we need so that we get it at the best price for all of us. That work is will be launched very soon. There are already many discussions ongoing with the member states and the companies in the member states that are, of course, the ones that are buying the gas on the global market. So that's, hope it answers your question. Thanks.
Now, about the future of gas, how much gas will we need? What is in your calculations, Piotr?
Well, this is. I would like to maybe start with the first question to Katarina. I wanted to say that it will be also very important to, as we mentioned, that we should work together all along the value chain, because we will also have to, on the infrastructure-wise, together with LNG operators and together with TSOs, also discuss about how to make this joint purchasing platform a success. So how to make together that this gas that will be purchased probably in majority cases via LNG can be effectively flowed to the landlocked countries. So this is also an exercise that we will also have to look at. On the well, let's say on the long term and short term, and our analysis, of course, we are now more into discussing how to satisfy the needs of the countries in a short term in terms of crisis. And this is where we are serving with the outlooks. So basically, what has to be done during the winter time, during the incidents where we are lacking really huge portion of the supply from the eastern direction from Russia. And this is something that we'll already have to address. On the issue you rightly mentioned, we look at the certain pathway or scenarios for the future in our TUI-NDP. So there we also have to take into the considerations that in some systems, well, irrespectively of the current situation, in the mid-run there will be a strong importance still of gas to substitute for heavy emitting fossil fuels, especially with some kind of lock-in or installed capacities, like in particular member states where you have a lot of district heating, for example. So these are the matters that we are projecting in our TUI-NDP scenarios. We have 3 pathways, and they, in a short and mid-term, include also these avenues for the member states with gas. And then we look at the adequacy of the existing networks. What is also quite important to say that, of course, we will have still some projects that are let's say gas related, but all of them will be hydrogen ready. And as I mentioned before, this edition already of TUI-NDP is focusing also very strongly or mainly on hydrogen assets that are being now proposed by the promoters.
Thank you very much. Maybe I will now give a floor to Bojana, and maybe then coming either to you, Piotr, or to Laem. And the question from the audience is, and sorry, I will read it. What's your opinion what's your opinion on missing distinction between hydrogen distribution and hydrogen transmission in hydrogen and gas decarbonization package?
Well, that's indeed a very, very interesting question. So basically, we talk about the hydrogen already, right? So for us, it's more about, let's say, the fact that there is very important to emphasize on the backbones, right? And this is something that we are going to work a lot on that. And basically, also the question is, as also was mentioned by Piotr, that we see already that some of the elements of third energy package are very well working in that regard. So basically the proper regulatory framework on the perspective of how, let's say, the future hydrogen system is going to be developed is extremely important, right? Indeed, we see that, let's say, some of the good solutions that we were having about and working well on the market for natural gas should be implemented when we talk about the future development of the hydrogen system.
Yeah, if I can come in on that, I think it's a very good question. I think it's very important not to forget about the contribution that the gas distribution network can make to decarbonisation. I'd point you to a study, Ready for Hydrogen, Ready for H2, which is a collaboration over 93 distribution companies, DSOs, right around Europe, expressing the view that they are ready to make a contribution and that their networks are compatible with hydrogen. Largely the distribution networks are polyethylene pipe, and that makes them, I would say, very ready for hydrogen. And I think it would be important not to overlook the contribution that sector can make, and the fact that they are willing to make a contribution as well.
Thank you, Alain, for that.
If I might just also jump in and just add, because the representative distribution system operators in Eurogas, we're very strong. We agree with all the other representatives, SEDEC, GEODA and GD4S. We want to see a strong differentiation between distribution and transmission activities with distinct and tailored rules for hydrogen DSOs and TSOs. We think that's missing, and we talked about the long-term market when I intervened. That's one element that we should have there, and we think that very strongly that basically the rules for hydrogen should be the same as they were for natural gas, and we haven't really understood why there is any specific difference in the way that this has been approached this time by the European Commission. So from a DSO perspective, we definitely want to see that differentiation. We want to understand the different rules. Of course, I can go on to say that we don't necessarily support the idea of vertical ownership unbundling of hydrogen distribution infrastructure, where there are integrated DSOs. And we also question the requirement for horizontal legal unbundling of hydrogen and natural gas distribution activities. So that in this area is probably, it's very interesting because Eurogas in general can see a lot of very useful things being done in the gas budget, but this particular area is the one which gives us the most pain because it's for our distribution system operator members, it's giving them pain. And so I think that it is very important we get clarity through the trilogue process that will inevitably follow the European Commission, European Parliament and the Council's positions. But we definitely want to see some differentiation between DSOs and TSOs. There will be different ways of dealing with hydrogen and different uses for hydrogen, yet both grids will still have a role to play. Thank you. Sorry for jumping in, Lanka.
No, I just wanted to make a commercial for the tomorrow session because there is a representative of Czech DSO participating at the project that Liam has mentioned, Ready for H2. That was the only way, but what you said is definitely much more worth than my commercial. I have quite a tricky question, so I'm looking to all of you who is going to be the volunteer. And the question is, does the increase in LNG imports not contradict the EU's green policy? What is the polluting factor of the transportation? I don't know whether it's Bojana or whoever.
Well, I can start because in essence, as buyers, as Eurogas also buyers, we say that, yeah, this is an issue that people raise. And they say that if we are going into long-term contracts for LNG, that we are going against the direction of travel. And I disagree. We have very clearly stated in the gas directive, no, maybe gas regulation, sorry, I see I haven't been paying enough attention to that. 2049 is the cutoff date for long-term contracts that are unabated. So that's 2049, that's 27 years from today. If we sign, I'm going to say this because it's public. ENGIE signed an agreement with Next Decade for 12 years. That's well within line within that. We understand that the overall consumption of natural gas will decline as we head towards 2050. We are also trying to diversify away from Russian gas. And that's very clear too. So we don't see it as a contradiction. There is an expectation that natural gas will be there for that duration of the next 27 years. And after that, it has to be abated. So in essence, there isn't a contradiction because the overall volume is expected to decrease. The amount of biomethane and the amount of hydrogen to increase, including biomethane imports and hydrogen imports, I might add. And therefore LNG, I think it's the way the European Commission, and maybe Katrina also said, the way they would see this is that LNG contracts can also lead to bio-LNG contracts or to hydrogen contracts. So in a way, it's paving the way to support the energy transition. We are not simply adding these 50 BCM of US LNG, for example. They are to replace, whilst we also reduce the amount of natural gas. So yes, we do get the question, Lenka. It is relatively controversial, but I don't believe that we are doing anything that is contrary to what the objective is of net neutrality, carbon net neutrality by 2050. I think I'll stop there.
Mm-hmm. I just one remark during the discussions on the potential of joint gas purchases. There were conditionalities raised by some of the member states, taking that if we go to sign a, let's say, 20-year gas purchase contract, we should have a clause there that would have requirements either on renewable gases or low carbon gases increase during the duration of the contract, gradual increase, but that's just one of the things. Okay, then going through the, or do you want, Katrina, do you want to react on anything that has been said?
Thanks. Yeah, maybe rapidly on the last point that indeed when taking measures now, we need urgent measures now to be able to phase out Russian gas rapidly, and that means replacing it by other sources of gas, but also then of course working on renewables, working on energy efficiency, etc., etc. So we will have a couple of years quite challenging ahead of us where we all need to move fast. But then by doing so, we need to keep the long term in mind, as James also said. And here we are working very actively. The platform is working very actively with our international suppliers, our international partners, who are also keen to decarbonize their economy and their production structures. And here the question of contracts for LNG that then can be turned into renewable hydrogen or biomethane and similar are of course of the interest of both partners, be it EU or the supplier country. So we need to work on this in parallel when getting the replacement gas for Russian gas now in the very short term. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and I think that were quite a nice concluding remarks made not only on behalf of the European Commission, but maybe for all of us from the panel. I would love to thank you once again to all of you that you found time for us to share your opinions, your points of view. And on behalf of the Czech Gas Association also, I would like to thank you for all the works you are doing day and night. Also during the weekends for providing for a safer future for us and basically maintaining the resilience of the gas infrastructure and gas solutions. So I hope that next year we will be able to meet, hopefully in presence here in Prague, and hopefully we will have by that time a few more nights to sleep, and we will congratulate ourselves that we have overcome safely the heating seasons and we are well prepared for the one that will be ahead of us. So thank you once again, all of you, for participating, for sharing your opinions, and looking forward to meeting you sometime in person, either in Brussels. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
MND, Moravské naftové doly, vás vítají na podzimní plynárenské konferenci. Aktivity skupiny MND navazují na více než 100letou tradici těžby plynu a ropy u nás. S těžbou plynu se začalo v České republice kolem roku 1910, kdy kbelský občan objevil na svém pozemku hořlavé plyny. O 9 let později již vzniká na starém toku řeky Moravy první průzkumný vrt, který dosahuje hloubky 217 metrů. V poválečném období dochází u nás ke sjednocení všech existujících ropných rafinerií a vrtů. Moravské naftové doly vznikají v roce 1969. V roce 1982 vyvrtali MND v obci Jablůnka doposud nejhlubší vrt u nás, a to do hloubky 6502 metrů. Od 90. let MND postupně vytvářejí skupinu společností se širokým záběrem činností od průzkumu ložisek po jejich navrtání, těžbu, skladování plynu a obchod. Od roku 2014 nabízejí energie napřímo odběratelům z řad domácností a dnes dodávají energie více než 250 000 zákazníků. MND své aktivity dále rozvíjejí o využití nových technologií. U vytěžených vrtů mapujeme potenciál ve vztahu k využití geotermální energie. Prověřujeme možnosti výroby zeleného vodíku v našich provozech. Rozšiřujeme naše energetické zdroje o slunce a vítr. Připravujeme ukládání CO2 do horninových struktur. V Anglii se podílíme na budování výkonné geotermální elektrárny pro botanickou zahradu. MND. Energie pro dnešek a budoucí generace.
Net4Gas je silná a stabilní společnost. Garantuje efektivní, bezpečnou a spolehlivou přepravu zemního plynu. Zaměstnává více než 500 zaměstnanců. Net4Gas je součástí strategické energetické infrastruktury České republiky. Významně přispívá k posílení energetické bezpečnosti a spolehlivosti dodávek zemního plynu nejen v České republice, ale v celém středoevropském regionu. Net4Gas je výlučným provozovatelem přepravní soustavy v České republice. Zabezpečuje mezinárodní tranzit a vnitrostátní přepravu. Ročně přepraví okolo 45 miliard metrů krychlových zemního plynu. Zákazníkům poskytuje spolehlivé a bezpečné přepravní služby 24 hodin denně, 7 dní v týdnu, 365 dní v roce. Net4Gas disponuje sítí plynovodů v délce přes 3800 kilometrů. Energetické trhy propojuje už od roku 1971. Přepravní soustavu neustále modernizuje a aktivně se podílí na vytváření budoucího modelu evropského trhu s plynem. Net4Gas patří k nejvýznamnějším energetickým investorům v České republice. Projekt plynovodu Gazela v hodnotě 10 miliard korun byl jedním z nejrozsáhlejších investičních projektů v České republice za posledních 30 let. Díky společnosti Net4Gas patří Česká republika mezi klíčové země, které se podílejí na zajištění energetické bezpečnosti Evropské unie. Net4Gas je odpovědným a seriózním partnerem. Jako dobrý soused dlouhodobě přispívá k rozvoji lokalit, ve kterých působí. Podporuje vysokou kvalitu výuky a vzdělávání, pomáhá zlepšovat sociální vazby a kvalitu života. Společnost Net4Gas je v České republice jedním z největších firemních dárců v oblasti ochrany přírody. Net4Gas jako významný středoevropský provozovatel přepravní soustavy bude hrát aktivní roli při propojování a integraci evropských trhů s plynem ve prospěch českých i ostatních evropských plynárenských zákazníků. Net4Gas. Connecting Markets.